Trump Media, his company, is suing a Brazilian judge hours before the judge brought charges against Jair Bolsonaro, the former authoritarian president of Brazil, known as the Trump of the tropics. Jair Bolsonaro was charged this week by that very same judge with attempting to kill Brazil's current president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the vice president. You might remember Bolsonaro, Trump of the tropics, ran for re-election in 2022 and lost to Lula, who was sworn in on January 1st, 2023. A week later, Bolsonaro's supporters stormed Brazil's National Congress building, Brazil's Supreme Court, and Brazil's presidential palace as Bolsonaro, just like Trump, spread lies about voter fraud. In a major crackdown in Brazil, Bolsonaro has been banned from Brazilian politics until 2030. Bolsonaro, like Donald Trump, didn't attend the inauguration of his successor. Instead, during the final days of his presidency, Bolsonaro flew to Florida to visit Donald Trump, and he spent 3 months in America. During his time in America, Bolsonaro continued to cultivate relations with the far right. He met with Steve Bannon. He spoke at a Turning Point USA conference hosted by white nationalist Charlie Kirk. That was on February 3rd, 2023, and it was held at Trump's Doral Hotel. And then Bolsonaro spoke at CPAC's annual meeting in March of 2023 in Maryland. Reuters reported that the audience, CPAC, that's the big conservative conference. Reuters reported that the audience of conservatives cheered Bolsonaro's pro-gun, anti-vax, and anti-abortion message. This just weeks after his supporters stormed Brazil's Supreme Court, Brazil's National Assembly, and the presidential palace as Bolsonaro continued to spread lies about a stolen election. Well, CPAC's big annual conference got underway Thursday, and Vice President J.D. Vance got a standing ovation kicking it off. Vance went on to tell the CPAC crowd that for the first time in 3 years, Trump is bringing peace to Europe, whether they want it or not. And Europe doesn't want Trump's definition of peace because to Europe, it's eerily reminiscent of Neville Chamberlain's September 30th, 1938, Peace in Our Time speech, where England agreed to allow Hitler to grab Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland without anyone consulting Czechoslovakia. But certainly, Donald Trump wouldn't hold peace talks over the fate of Ukraine without allowing Ukraine at the table. He wouldn't make the same mistake Neville Chamberlain would. Yeah, he did. During his speech before CPAC, Vance questioned the wisdom of America defending Europe if we no longer have shared values. He's saying that we don't share the same values as Europe. And Vance singled out, in his CPAC speech, he singled out the German government for waging war on free speech by silencing members of the far-right Alternative for Germany party, made up of neo-Nazis, Nazi apologists. Some say this party could be the runner-up in Sunday's snap election. Now, because of Germany's Nazi past, political parties, even the conservative ones, have agreed to establish a firewall where they refuse to form a coalition with any party that echoes the policies of Adolf Hitler, like the Alternative for Germany party. But J.D. Vance and Elon Musk openly support the Alternative for Germany party. So J.D. Vance sees the firewall as suppression of speech. Well, don't political parties have the freedom of speech to form a firewall? J.D.? Le Monde reporting hundreds of thousands of Germans have taken to the streets in the past week to show support for the firewall that keeps the Alternative for Germany party out of their government. former Tory Prime Minister John Major, conservative. He became Prime Minister after Margaret Thatcher. Conservative Prime Minister John Major, like most of Europe and Great Britain, is appalled by J.D. Vance's speech, the one he gave in Munich last week. John Major said J.D. Vance should be lecturing Putin about free speech, not Europe. John Major said, quote, "In Mr. Putin's Russia, people who disagree with him disappear or die or flee the country, or on a statistically unlikely level, fall out of high windows somewhere in Moscow." John Major went on to say, quote, "To lecture the West about democracy seems really rather odd. He should be doing that in Moscow." But for Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, it's not about protecting all speech. It's about just protecting hate speech while silencing your enemies. They only want to protect hate speech. For example, Elon Musk said Bill Whitaker of 60 Minutes deserves, quote unquote, a long prison sentence for his interview with Kamala Harris in the lead up to the November election. You might recall Donald Trump, Mr. Freedom of Speech, is suing CBS News for $10 billion, claiming he suffered irreparable harm after 60 Minutes ran what he called a heavily edited interview with Kamala Harris that made her seem smarter than she actually is. Donald Trump refused to take part in an interview with 60 Minutes after being told they would fact-check him. Fact-checking is not protected by freedom of speech in MAGA world. And Trump's new head of the FCC demanded to see transcripts and unedited raw video of the CBS interview, the CBS News 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. CBS turned it over to the FCC and made it public, and I recommend you read the transcripts. The lawsuit is meritless, but it doesn't matter. This, J.D. Vance, and I guess they didn't teach this to you at Yale Law School, this, by its very definition, is government suppression of free speech. This is a violation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment is about protecting people's speech from government censorship. That lawsuit that Donald Trump filed, as well as the FCC going so far as to say it would block CBS's merger with another company, the FCC says it's going to block CBS's merger because of the Kamala Harris interview. By its very definition, that is a violation of the First Amendment. But J.D. Vance at CPAC saying we don't have shared values with Europe, especially Germany, because they censor neo-Nazi political parties. Like I said, Trump and his ilk hate freedom of speech. They only love hate speech. That's all they want to protect. They want to protect the right to be wrong. Whenever you correct a MAGA Republican, they accuse you of, you're canceling me, you're censoring. How am I canceling you? I'm just pointing out that you're wrong, your facts are wrong. Censorship. And when you say, hey, I don't feel like supporting a podcaster who uses the N-word, censorship, freedom of speech, cancel culture, they only protect hate speech. Trump just appointed Ed Martin as the Washington, D.C. federal prosecutor. Martin is a MAGA attack dog, and he launched an investigation into language, words spoken by Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, who said during a CNN interview, quote, what the American public wants is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight, unquote. He also called Elon Musk a dick. So I always say people on our side should watch their words. And obviously, Congressman Garcia doesn't choose his words carefully, but no harm, no foul. He gave an opening, though, for the new D.C. U.S. Attorney, Martin, to send him a letter, quote, this sounds to me like a threat to Mr. Musk, an appointed representative of President Donald Trump, who you call a dick, and government staff who work for him. Their concerns have led to this inquiry. So Mr. Freedom of Speech, Donald Trump, has ordered this new D.C. attorney to intimidate Garcia, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is being investigated by the Justice Department because after Roe was overturned, Senator Schumer said the Supreme Court will pay a price for this. And MAGA world is saying, you see, they're just as bad as we are. You think he might have meant a political price for this? Well, February 24th marks the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Financial Times reporting the White House vetoed a G7 statement marking the anniversary. They're all about freedom of speech, but they didn't like a statement marking the anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, the Trump White House objected to language in the statement that referred to Russia as the aggressor in the war. Last year, the G7's statement read, this was when Biden was still president, "We call on Russia to immediately cease its war of aggression and completely and unconditionally withdraw its military forces from the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine." The Guardian reporting the Trump White House also blocking similar language in a UN declaration marking the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you have any doubt they were the aggressor?